What's going on YouTube? Welcome to another portrait painting tutorial live. This one is going to be different in the sense that I am going to try to stream a video that I had already recorded ahead of time. So this is going to be so I can talk to you, answer your questions as efficiently as I can, and also have a chance to paint something without having too much pressure on me with time. So we're going to go ahead and start the painting demonstration now, and what I'm going to do is explain the entire process the best that I can and answer your questions the best that I can, all in the comfort of sitting down here and watching this video live with you. So a couple things to mention. The painting is going to eventually look like this. This is the finished result here. So in an hour 50 something minutes, this is what you're going to see as the finished result, and it started like that, a squiggly line as you saw there. So we'll get the reference or the finished painting out of there. It is an 8x10 inch oil on linen panel. So the linen is stretched over top of a wood surface. This is from a Centurion brand, and then I lead primed it afterwards with neutral gray. So we've thinned out a bunch of paint. I basically took whatever was dark off of my palette. So the Dioxazine purple, Ultramarine blue, and a little bit of green. My green, by the way, is Ultramarine blue mixed with cadmium yellow. So now I'm going in with wet on wet paint, which is the main idea behind ALLA PRIMA painting. So you see a bunch of titanium white, a bunch of cadmium orange and blue, and I'm actually going to be drawing this thing wet on wet, and I'm not usually comfortable doing this live or really talking in general. Talking and painting like this is very difficult. So this is actually how I try to draw for the most part when I'm painting over top of a painting that already has some stuff on it. But this to me is a little bit more fun, a little bit more expressive. So the paint is going on, you know, really easily there. So remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the chat box there. So it looks like my chat box has frozen a little bit, and I see some comments here on my little screen, but I don't see the comments on my chat box, which is kind of a problem. But let me see if I can even read this off of my screen. I can't. Hold on a second. So the good thing is, as I'm pausing to check my chat box, I'm actually able to continue painting and demonstrate what I'm doing. There we go. So hey, hippie artist, I'm doing well. Hey Jonas, welcome. Fernanda ED, thanks for watching from Argentina. Hey Jonas, I like the let's see, you like the educational videos from the series. Oh, thank you. That ended. For now, it's gonna start again in January when I'm teaching in person again. So we're taking a little break from December to January with the online class that I'm the in-person class that I'm teaching, and trying to find where my streaming stuff went. It kind of just disappeared. So yeah, I'm gonna be uploading videos like that on Sundays starting sometime in January, but we're gonna continue doing this kind of video format. I have no clue what happened to my stream. There it is. So this is a good thing now. So things can happen on my computer end, but you still see painting going on. So that's a very good thing there. So like I said, please feel free to ask any art related questions. I'll be able to converse with you much better now that I don't have to multitask that much. So now I'm putting in a dark shape for the eye sockets. What I use to mix for that is very simple, pretty much just probably Ultramarine Blue, Cadmium Orange. I could have even went Phthalo Turquoise and Cadmium Orange. I could have went with, say, Indian Yellow and Dioxazine Purple, it would have been pretty much the same result for the dark shape there. And what I want to do with ALLA PRIMA here is cover as efficiently as I can. So you're looking at the first 5 minutes of the painting time. In the first 5 minutes, I'm covering a lot of ground. So having the background tone and the light of the skin tone there all together makes ALLA PRIMA much, much better. Now, John Singer Sargent would say, the thicker you paint, the more it flows. And I believe that to be true if you use a lot of paint and you thin it out slightly. It's a little bit harder if you don't thin the paint out with ALLA PRIMA, especially if you're using artist grade oil paints. So now I'm going in with the outside of the face with the background color, and that's no more complicated of a mixture than, say, alizarin permanent, a little bit of green and some dioxazine purple, and I'm going in with the background color to carve out the silhouette of the outside of the face. So when you're working in ALLA PRIMA like this, you're thinking exactly the same way that you would be thinking with drawing linearly. The only thing is you're working with masses of color. Now, by the way, the colors are listed in the description box of the video, but if you want me to explain the colors a little bit more to you, I can. The palette that you're seeing there is this one, and this is my new Wave Highland palette that I rarely clean. I just kind of use it all day, every day. It's my daily driver, basically. And I set it up, I turned it, and I set it up so that you can see the colors that I'm mixing. You can also see the palette, kind of how it looks in all of its glory, all of its messiness. And I'm just basically keeping an organization. As you see from the top are the lighter values. On the bottom, it starts to get darker. And that's the way that I'm going about navigating with this. And I do tend to use a lot of titanium white, though I will use lead white somewhat in the middle value range there. So now I'm starting to add planes. So a very thick amount of paint goes into it. Mostly titanium white, but definitely some cadmium red and some of the green color. Remember, my green is just ultramarine blue and cadmium yellow. Typically, I suggest that you use Viridian, but this works just as well. Viridian, I would say, is a little bit better. But I typically, with wet on wet painting, with ALLA PRIMA painting, I'm trying to think of it almost like a sculpture. So you see the forehead there, you see the eye sockets, you see the side of the face. It's pretty much like how I would do it if I was carving it out of clay. Big chops of form there with light hitting the lightmost facing planes. And the trick here is to get the subtlety through working with wet paint into wet. So please feel free to ask any questions. Like I said, it looks like my chat box is freezing a little bit on my end, which is kind of annoying. I don't know why it's freezing there. Sometimes I have to refresh it for it to work. One thing I could do is look at it through my iPad. But of course, I will continue to narrate it to you the way that I see this happening. So now I'm throwing on red into the hair. So I'm mixing wet paint into wet paint. Did you see that there? So I'm mixing on the palette. And like I said, a lot of these mixtures end up being somewhat intuitive. I don't end up thinking about them too much. I go and I see red and I throw in red. Like I said, I'm not putting the photo reference in here because I want it to be purely painting and mixing and me explaining the process to you. Again, this is eventually what that painting is going to look like. You can already see side by side that you see the architecture and how it's going to eventually get into the shapes that you're going to eventually see with the finished result there. So we're going to get that out of there. Let's see if the chat box did its thing. Finally it did. Question from Fernanda. Could I use, let's see here. Could I use acrylics for this method instead? Yeah, you could use acrylics, but the thing is it's not going to be wet on wet anymore. It's going to be working with large masses of shapes. But you can. For example, if what you're seeing there is already dry, you're going to still paint into it, but you're not going to be able to, say, mix into it. You're going to add directly over top of it, like adding puzzle pieces on top of puzzle pieces. But you could do it that way. But I will say that it's going to be a great deal more difficult to use acrylics on this, and I would recommend perhaps using water mixable oil paints over acrylics for something like this, especially for portraiture. Not to hate on acrylics, but it does make it much harder. Hippie artists are using any medium to thin the paint. At this point, mostly mineral spirits, but what you don't see on the palette is closer to the thumb hole of the palette is Neo-Megilp is the medium I like to use. I think I'll only really use it probably in the background area there. Hey Stephanie Thompson, hey Jonas, hi David Bonnet. Yeah, it's a little strange here how my I might have to try and read off of my screen. Let's see if I can make the chat box a little bigger. You should still be able to see the mixtures. It's just the words from the chat box are there. Let's see. Do you have any? Let's see. Free brushing is great from David Bonnet. So yeah, working with I don't know if I worded it free brushing, but I get what you mean. Working more loosely around the shapes, you become more intuitive. So at this stage in the painting, by the way, I was listening to music when I was painting this, so that's a nice thing. I don't have to worry about getting copyright issues with YouTube and all that stuff. Just film it, paint it, and there you go. But I do like to work as intuitive as I can, so I don't really stress too much about the likeness or about the drawing, and I just kind of feel my way around the shapes, and I think that's what you mean by that. Let's see. Do you have any tips on how to paint in layers using ALLA PRIMA? Let's see, like should you leave the light parts and work around it? So working in layers with ALLA PRIMA, we're basically going to be doing that here, but I'm going to be painting wet paint into wet paint, and I'm still currently trying to fix my chat box so it doesn't look that big there. Let's shrink that down again. I would suggest to work. Oh, thank you so much for the super chat, Stephanie Thompson. Thank you so much. That helps so much. Thank you. When you're working with ALLA PRIMA and you're layering wet into wet, the secret, let me tell you, is the quality of your paints. If you are using, for example, student grade paints, that's going to be a problem because it's already very thin and waxy. If you use water mixable oil paints, it is possible, but if you use, say, like a Holbein or a Artisan, Winsor Newton Artisan, that's going to give you a lot of trouble. Believe me, I've been there, I've tried it, I've done it, and I've suffered. Gamblin, Winsor Newton, Williamsburg, Old Holland, Rublev, Michael Harding, brands like that are going to be your friend. And what it is the pigment, and see how loosely I just woof right there, right across the eyelid, right into the nose. What it is the concentration of pigment in your oil paint when you're mixing like that. See that on the nose? That is a loaded brush on the paintbrush. You want that thickness on your brush so that you have a range to navigate. So the thicker paint, when you thin it out and you have high quality paints, you're going to have a much better sense of control. And what you're going to do is, by the layering, I like that question, that's why I'm talking about it a lot. With the layering, what you're going to do is you're going to mix into what's already there. That's what it is. You're going to mix into what's already there. You cannot do that with acrylics. You can't mix into what's already there. Instead, you're going to have to add something new to it and adjust it that way. But it's totally possible. I did one acrylic tutorial that it did all right. I did a product review a long time ago. Some of you may have seen it. Some of you may not have seen it. And I painted very similar. But let me tell you, that was much, much harder. Hey Jav, what is on your current playlist when painting? I knew someone was gonna ask that. That's all right. I like Vila. I like kind of electronic music these days, although sometimes I go old school like Nickelback and things like that. But if you haven't heard of her, Veela, she's not very well known singer. At least I think she should be known much more. But she's more like an electronic kind of. So I go back and forth with that, and sometimes I like to play classical guitar. That playlist on Spotify. I think at this point I was rocking out probably to like Linkin Park or something. I can't really tell you exactly, but I'm all over the place. I like Tupac, Biggie, and Jay-Z. Big L was pretty good, not well known back then. So I go all over the place, all over the place with music. Hey Jonas, I'm glad you liked the explanation there. As you see, I'm going in with planes here of light. I tend to use a little bit more titanium white these days than the lead white because it takes me a little bit less time to raise the values that much. It does slow down the drying time, but when you're working wet into wet, that's actually not so much of a bad thing. So now adding more light onto the cheekbone structure and the side of the concavity of the eye socket, and working our way down towards the bottom of the nose, the top of the orbicularis oris, the structure for the curvature of the mouth. Again, you're starting to see that form start to develop. Now you're starting to see where that kind of control of the structure is going to allow me to create more depth into it. So again, thank you so much, Stephanie Thompson, for the super chat. So let's see if I missed anything. I think I did. It's kind of, the chat is a little bit slow, but I think it's working better now. The main thing to take out of what you're seeing here, and this has only been about what, like, I don't even know. This has been about 17 minutes. We're still under 20 minutes. Excuse me, in painting time, is the control of the paint and the materials, how important the materials is. Now you see a plane start to emerge on the bottom of the nose, and it's not like I'm actively thinking about it as I'm doing it. I'm more or less reacting to the form of the nose and carving that structure. This part I did actively think this one through. This is going to be the bottom of the top plane of the cheekbone, the zygomatic bone. Hey Rob CP, welcome. So that's going to be the bottom of the cheekbone area, and I typically put that in even though I don't see it that much on the model or the reference. That's so that I have control over top of the form on the side of the face. That's a very tricky area, much more tricky when you're working from a photo reference. Now you're looking at how I'm starting to maneuver the planes around. I'm starting to curve it around the side of the face. So this is the idea behind it. The idea behind this is that I'm working with a structure. It's three-dimensional, and the mistakes in this structure are going to be much easier to see because they're three-dimensional, rather than working with just light and shadow, or rather than just working with just lines. Excuse me. It's much more difficult to work with lines or to work with just light and shadow to see mistakes. Now there's something else you need to consider. So when you're working like this, now see how I'm pushing the paint underneath of the cheekbone. The thing to consider is your knowledge of color has to be very intuitive. You're thinking more about value and you're thinking more about structure. So as I'm pulling the light underneath of the cheekbone there, I added more green to it. Automatically, I knew that that area would be a little more green. Now, another thing, yes, color has to be more intuitive, but another thing is that when you're working in ALLA PRIMA wet on wet like this, the awkward stage is magnified by like a lot. So doing this in, doing this live while talking and narrating and all that stuff, it would slow me down greatly. I would not reach this point in what has just been the first 20 minutes. That's the first 20 minutes. No way I would be able to do that, if I had to actually narrate through it. This is just kind of how I feel my way around the color. So from Rob CP, I painted a portrait from a photo just in black and white. I'm happy with the face, but I can't paint her to save my life. Trust me, I always tell my students that portraiture is the story of how a bunch of little things either made my day or ruined my day. But I try not to stress about it that much, but that's an over-exaggeration. But portraiture is the story of all the little things. And when you're working with ALLA PRIMA like this, if you can get the underlying structure of the face down quickly and you're able to create something that you can maneuver around, so kind of like a clay sculpture, if you can kind of maneuver it around it, it becomes much more fun, and you might actually find that you'll paint better doing this, but it depends on how you feel. So if you're feeling more, like calm, relaxed, so slow paced, then perhaps just sticking with lines would be better. So I started a painting just like less than an hour ago. I guess it might have been an hour ago now. But I didn't even get into color. I just kept it with the umber sketch the entire time. Hey, hippie artist. I would have mud if I painted this way without ever cleaning my brush. Suggestions? Oh yes, I got some suggestions for you. So now you see I'm adding the pink to the lips there, which is a little bit of red into the skin tones there. My suggestions are two big ones. So if you look at the palette there, you can see an organization of values from the top. It's lighter going down to the bottom. The left looks a little bit cooler. The right looks warmer, where I just mixed the color of the lips. And that's my everyday working palette. So that's not the entire palette. The entire palette looks something like this. But even on the palette right now, whatever I was doing before, this is probably already dry, but you see it's light ranging down to dark. There is no such thing as mud, as there is no such thing as an ugly color in painting. Mud implies an ugly color. And for example, if the colors are not related properly to one another, that's going to give the illusion of an ugly color, or the illusion of just a color that doesn't work. That's the first suggestion. Keep the organization on your palette as much as you can. Next is have a light brush and have a dark brush. Like I said, I was just painting not that long ago. There is paint on my brushes. So this is my light brush. This is my dark brush for the big brushes, and I have a light brush and a dark brush on the smaller brushes. Yes, these brushes should be in the freezer right now, but Ipari's lazy and he forgot to put his brushes in the freezer. And putting your brushes in the freezer is already lazy. So best thing to do is to clean them as soon as you can. So let's see. So those were my 2 pointers for you, Rob CP, to avoid having mud in your paintings. As you say, organize the value range and color range on your palette, and keep a light brush and a dark brush. Organize your brushes as well. Organization is going to be key. That becomes a habit, and you repeat the habit as you're painting, and all of a sudden you have no worries at all about that. So hopefully that helps. Let's see, from David Bonnet. Let's see. The face is a little dark underneath. Well, it could be. Now looking at the reference, not the reference, but the final painting, it could be a little dark underneath. I'm not entirely sure, but I did the best that I could to push the form there. And of course, it's not going to look exactly the same because the camera setting is not going to be the same as when I took the final photograph. The best that I can do, the same settings on the camera, it's still going to look a little bit different there. Let's see, from Rob. My painting I'm working on now is a girl with dreadlocks, which I think may be easier than straight hair, but I am procrastinating on doing the hair. Hair, you see how we're still pretty early in the painting, but I already put stuff in for the hair as I did for the background. Look at hair as a series of shapes of light and dark. And like I did there, I mixed directly onto the hair to get that look. And it really is all about light and shadow on the hair, trying to get the form to read just like you would with the face. A lot of times problems with hair arises when we think of it as something extra, because it isn't. It is part of the likeness of the model. It is a very important aspect. If you crop the hair out, you're pretty much left with almost just half of the likeness of the person that you're drawing or painting. Now you saw I added a little bit of a cooler color to contrast the side of the nose. Notice that that cooler color is on the left-hand side of the palette, so that's how I keep organization on my palette. Plus, I'm very comfortable with this palette. I'm not comfortable with other palettes. Just the layout is very important. So if you keep the colors on your palette, yes, they're going to dry on your palette and you're going to have to scrape them off once in a while, but it's like muscle memory. You start to keep it there and you know where to address it. So now again, wet on wet. This is pretty much like, I guess, the second layer, wet on wet. I'm not sure, but you see how I'm adding more subtlety into the forms. I'm starting to turn the forms by adding planes in between planes here. And on the side of the concavity of the eye socket that rolls into the corner of the root of the nose, as you saw there, and I pushed some of the colors a little bit cooler. Like I said, my green color, as I'm putting in there, is just Ultramarine Blue mixed with Cadmium Yellow, because Yupari is too lazy to go to the store to buy more Viridian or to mix his own Viridian with powder pigment. But anyway, what you see now is going to be one of my first mistakes that I made in here. I made tons of mistakes. I mean, a drawing is nothing more than a series of corrections. A painting is nothing more than drawing with color or drawing with paint. So in a painting is a series of corrections with color. So I had to draw a little bit too, I think a little bit too wide at that point. But at this point in the painting, I don't think I really noticed it. You don't see it in the video, but I was standing back quite a lot. And the standing back really does help to catch mistakes. But at this point, there's probably a long pause. Yeah, there was a long pause there because I probably did stand back to try to see any kind of things to adjust there. So again, feel free to ask any art-related questions. We've got about, I think, just 20 of us here watching this live, which is also my fault. I need to start to post these ahead of time. And it's just been very hard with my schedule, to be honest. But now that my in-person class ended until January, I should be able to do these. The most likely day you're going to catch me really on here is going to be Tuesdays. But I'll do my best to do these more consistently. Now I'm adding more of the shadow underneath of the jaw. That shadow shape is a very simple neutral that was mixed with red and green, or perhaps blue and orange. My palette consists of the primaries and secondaries. I don't have any tertiaries, meaning I don't have any earth colors. And I keep it that way so that I can mix every single color pretty much from scratch, which gives me more variety. Okay, let's see. Question from Rob CP. Let's see. I have seen some artists get rid of brush marks and leave some. Wait, what? Get rid of brush marks and leave some brush marks. Is it just the style of the particular artist, and is there no right or wrong way? The latter, there is no right or wrong way. You can leave the brush marks or you can edit them out. Though I lean towards editing them out a little bit, because if you tend to try and stylize your painting, meaning you're all about the brushy and making that brush stroke look, you know, like cool, stylish. A problem with that is you're gonna think about it, and then you're gonna take your eye off the drawing. You're gonna take your eye off the form, and that's the most important thing. Now, a balance is a good thing. If you have the ability to prioritize your drawing and then kind of stylize it a little bit with your brush strokes, that's good. But think about brush strokes as the font of a book, the font of an ebook, I guess, because we're all using ebooks now, or the font of a regular book. Like if you like to read, it's just a font, right? Think of it as just a font. You care about the message, not that much about the font. That's the most important thing. So I don't know if I can pronounce your name, but thank you for watching from the Netherlands. Welcome to the live stream. Like I said, this is pre-recorded in the past, so I'm narrating it to you live. And I'm watching this along with you live, and I get to see how I created this. Like I said, I was listening to music when I was painting this. I was just kind of zoned out and just enjoying the motions, basically just working as freely as I could. And as you see, the first 31 minutes just passed. No way I could do this in 30 minutes if I were to be doing this while talking. This is purely just me just painting with the camera on. Hey Rob CP. Oh, good. I'm glad you liked my answer there. And another thing with these videos is going to be my virtual classroom that I upload with my online students' work. So that I will be creating later tonight. So Tuesday is a jam-packed day for you all. So you're gonna get a bunch of content. You're guaranteed to have at least one video on Tuesday from me. But it looks like today you might have two. So we'll see how that goes. Now you see how I'm using a lot of paint, a lot of cadmium red there. And let's see what we're gonna do with it. We're going right into the hair. See that? Already trying to get the curls for the hair, or the waviness of the hair. Like I said, the brush strokes show through, but they're not intentional. They're there to portray the form. Lots of paint on the brush. And at that point, I believe I did thin it out a little bit with Neo-Megilp, just to get the paint to flow and have a little bit more body to it. If you thin it out with Neo-Megilp, it is less liquidy than odorless mineral spirits, which can be pretty useful for ALLA PRIMA. Hey Harry, welcome. Hey Texas Tim. Oh, the canvas is 8 by 10 inches. 8 by 10 inches. And this is also part of a series of paintings that I will eventually, once I can get to it, I will be selling these. 8 by 10s are much easier to sell and to ship because they're smaller. So now you see that we're starting to push the forms around. I actually moved the eye to our left, up a little bit. Remember, as I always say, keep your shapes simple and easy so that when the time comes to make changes, those changes are simple and easy to manage. Now you're seeing this in real time, narrating it to you live. I messed that eye up, and now I'm moving it up. So that is my fan brush. That is what I use to knock down the thickness of the paint, also to reduce the amount of glare. Hey Reem, welcome. And there again, another pass on the contour of the side of the face. So not too much careful measuring going on there. Just working with the shapes and relating the shapes of one another. Try the most that you can to relate shapes to one another, to relate colors to one another. It's all about being able to see the entire picture all at once. Also notice that I haven't switched to sables yet. I've maintained just bristle brushes the entire time. So that is a size 2 silver brush Grand Prix, either regular length or extra long filbert. I used, did I say size 3? That's a size 2. Size 2 filbert bristle. The other one, the one that I started with, those brushes were size 4 bristle brushes, either the extra long filbert or the regular length. Now here's where you're going to run into problems if you're going to do this with acrylic. So the side of the face, hey Reem, thanks for watching from Jordan. You're mixing wet paint into wet paint on the canvas. This is going to be the biggest problem with acrylic, and why I would suggest, if you're strictly working with acrylics because of the health hazards and the cleaning, just switch to water mixable oil paints. You're going to save yourself years and years and years and years of struggle in this department, especially if you want to do something that requires more soft edges. Mixing wet paint into wet paint, less medium gives you a softer edge. So thicker paint gives you a softer edge. Thinner paint can give you a sharper edge. So now I'm actually starting to push the form underneath of the cheekbone area. And that is an over-exaggeration, because with my planes, I tend to overdo them first before I add softness and subtlety to them. So there you see I'm mixing wet into wet, mixing a plane for the gradation of the side of the face. So remember the basic form. Think about it in terms of light and shadow, highlight, middle light, dark light, reflected light, accent, cast shadow, just like the form ball that we talked about in the past. But now the subtlety starts to take place. This is now the side of the maxilla of the face right there, and that's a bit of a sharper plane change that I'm exaggerating a little bit there. Now you see an even stronger plane change for that. And now you see I'm starting to add a little bit to the wing of the nose. I didn't think about it at the time, but now that I look at it, I added some green above the nose. I didn't really think that through, but I'm pretty sure that adding the green on the top of the wing of the nose enabled me to go with contrast, color contrast. So I'm going in with those more reddish colors over top of the green. Funny to watch this over again. I didn't really know that at the time, but it looks like that's what I was doing. Like I said, this is more of an intuitive kind of approach, but the method, the wet on wet a la PRIMA method, is very simple to understand. Have the best quality paints that you can, meaning just Winsor Newton or Gamblin. Those are really easily accessible. Work with bristle brushes. Know that it's easier to get sharper edges when you thin out the paint. It's easier to get softer edges when you have thicker paint. Paint wet into wet, so you are going over top of wet paint and building on top of it that way. Hey Rob CP, did you get a chance to check out? No, I haven't checked this artist out. But you know, I can actually copy and paste it now that I'm gonna do that now. So I'm copying it and I'm pasting it onto my notes on my computer. Now that's another advantage. So I'm gonna title this suggestions. So if you want me to look something up, just feel free to say it, and I've copied and pasted it onto my computer. So I'm able to do this now. I would not be able to do that. I'd be under a lot of stress painting and narrating at this point with the way the painting is, which is just getting past the awkward stage. But now I have the name saved, so I'll be able to look it up. So thanks for sharing that with us, Rob CP. So now you see I'm going in with the white. Now my webcam is blocking whatever I was mixing there, so I'm taking that off. And what I'm doing, actually, I remember this now, I'm adjusting the mouth. So now the mouth looks a little bit silly, and I don't think you really need to see the color that I'm mixing. Just know that the color is the same as what I did with the skin tones, which, by the way, is not something that is a formula. If you want an easy formula for skin colors, use burnt sienna, white, and ultramarine blue for skin, and add a little bit of red and alizarin, like a little bit of cadmium red and alizarin for lips. Easiest color palette, even easier than the Zorn palette. It's not about what color I'm using, it's about how the colors are relating to one another. So you see how I just changed the expression of the model's mouth a little bit there, and that's a tricky spot. That's a tricky area for a 3/4 pose closer to profile. Very tricky because it's so easy to go too far to the left and too far to the right. In the beginning, I was too far to the left because I was fixing it, I was adjusting it. But now you see how it's starting to resemble what the final painting is going to look like. And yes, some people are going to like the earlier stage more than the finished stage, but that's the way this goes. That's the way oil painting goes. There's never going to be a perfect in the middle. Let's see, from Rob CP, don't forget to copy and paste the acronym for haters, having anger towards everyone reaching success. Copying and pasting it now. So thanks for sharing that with me as well. Haters having anger towards everyone reaching success. I think I want to make a sign or something and put that here with it. So thank you for sharing that. So let's go ahead and ask some questions now to everyone watching this live. We've got about, I think, 20 something of us here. I'm looking at, I think, 30, 31. So welcome whoever just signed on. So now this is going to be a fun part. Question for everyone watching this live. So question is going to be, I'm going to change the questions up a little bit as I narrate what's going on here. I'm putting in a plane change. I'm putting in a plane change for the bottom of the orbicularis of the lower lip, and I made it a little bit more green. So my question for everyone is, what do you struggle with the most with your artwork? And let's try to be more specific than writing everything, because I think I struggle with everything. We all struggle with everything. But what in particular are you currently struggling with your painting? I'll answer first. What I struggle with the most, for me, is composition. For me, it's figuring out, like, what do I want to paint? How do I want to paint it? And how do I want to display it in the painting? That's what I struggle with the most. So what does everyone struggle with the most? Now that cool color underneath of the lip is similar to the cool color above the wing of the nose, because it helps to add color contrast to the skin tone. So question from Rob. Let's see. I've heard it can take between 6 months and 1 year to dry before you can varnish. So does that mean your client has to wait 1 year for delivery? No, of course not. As soon as it's touch dry, you can use something called Gamvar. I'm going to type that out for you. Gamvar. And you want to use this when your painting is touch dry. And it is completely removable, and it's made by Gamblin. It's It's removable. I think you can actually remove it with Gamsol, but definitely we'll double check that later. But that's what I would use. That's what I have used when I sold paintings that were less than 6 months old. But typically for a large studio painting, I wait the 6 months, and I use Demar varnish is the one that takes longer. So from Rob, let's see, struggle with hair, but just starting with painting, so not sure what else. Okay, so hair definitely is something that I underdid. I underemphasized for a long time in my painting career, so I feel you there. I would say that with hair, keep it at the same pace as the face. As you add structure to the face, add structure to the hair, and that will help you out dramatically, because in the past I kind of waited till the end to put the hair. From Hippie Artist, struggling with getting proper color when placing a underground of sienna or raw umber. Everything looks wrong. So I would recommend working on a neutral gray. It's much easier. As you see, I'm starting to navigate around the planes of the nose. I'm actually even reshaping the cast shadow of the bottom of the nose, and that is because the neutral allows you to have more control over the warmer colors and even the cooler colors because it's right in the middle. But I would say working with color, the best thing you can possibly do is to do outdoor still life with and that's a color study exercise. But for the most part, as you're seeing on my palette, organization is key. As you see the light on the top and the organization in the middle, the darks on the bottom, organization is key. That's going to help you even more than anything else I could really say is the organization on the palette there. So Stephanie Thompson, I prefer this style of painting presentation because you are more relaxed and you can progress through the painting. You're able to explain the process while looking back at what you've accomplished. Yes. Yes. That is a good thing. Thank you for that. I was very nervous actually. I didn't know really if anyone would like to see a video presented in this format, but I do hope that I will be able to make this more fun and educational for everyone. So I definitely appreciate your input there, Stephanie Thompson, and I will film more of these. They're fun for me to film because if I make a mistake, if I totally bomb it, I don't have to show it. And I do that quite frequently. Don't think that every time I paint something, it just comes out the way I want it to. I totally bomb paintings all the time. And it's just a way for me to loosen up and to be able to just kind of like, it's almost like stretching, like a stretching exercise, because it's not a long-term thing. It's a nice and easy study to do. So for Stephanie Thompson, I have problems completing a project because I lose interest while waiting for layers to dry. Oh, believe me, I have some paintings that I started like a year ago, and I will return to them. I actually recently finished a painting that I started over a year ago, and trust me, you can return to a painting, especially an oil painting, even after 6 months to a year. You can wait even like 5 years and return to it. It's not a competition. It's not a rush, and you only get better the more you paint. So say I was a skill level like 7 when I started a painting, and then I returned to it as, say, a skill level like 20 out of like 100 or something. I can keep working on it. I can keep building it just because of the nature of how we paint. Let's see. Hey, Rob CP. Oh, good. I'm glad you like the format. Oh, good. I'm glad you like the format too, Christopher. And let's talk more about Yupari struggles. So as you're watching me paint this, there's something that I struggle with greatly, and it is a lot of times it's when an eye like that is, there's just a thin sliver of it. So simplifying an eye that's like right there, like a little sliver of it, is an art form unto itself. So I would say the best thing to do, and what I always do when I'm struggling with something like that, is I stand back more. If you're struggling with something, you have to stand back even more. And I can relate this to pretty much anything that you have to like learn over time, like playing pool is my hobby. It's a sport that I like to do now, and when I see a very difficult shot that I have to make in pool, the fundamentals are so much more critical. Like if I drop my elbow too much, or if I jump up on the shot like too early, I can definitely miscue or something like that. And the proper form is so important, especially when you're dealing with something as complicated as an eye that is on the side, just a thin sliver of it. Hey Rob CP, let's see. You heard Leonardo worked on the Mona Lisa for 20 years. I don't think he worked on it 20 years, like every single day for 20 years, but I'm sure he probably finished it in 1 year and then repainted it in like 20 years. That's totally possible, especially if he didn't varnish it, I think. But yeah, 4 years is possible, but more likely probably just repainted it a couple times, which I think most of us do. Yeah, Christopher. Leonardo was a busy man with lots of projects. Definitely lots of projects. So you see here a balance between how I'm going with the interior shapes, the exterior shapes, the big brushes, and the little brushes. So like I said, the hair, I'm treating it just like the forms on the face. And you're in for a long ride. We are 51 minutes. We still got an hour left. So get cozy, get comfortable. You're going to watch this painting evolve until its final result, its final form. Dragon Ball Z quote there, final form. Any Dragon Ball Z fans out there? Or Super, Dragon Ball Super? Which really aggravated me. I went to an anime convention with my wife, and this guy was like snickering at us, or I forgot what the word is, but kind of like made a comment like, "Oh, Dragon Ball Z." Like, I'm only gonna talk about this for another 30 seconds, but that was the only time I wanted to like do one of those like power blasts on him. Yeah, that aggravated me, but anyway, 30 seconds are up. So now I'm starting to put the background in, and this is where I believe I used some medium Neo-Megilp. So Neo-Megilp is, I'm going to type it out for you first of all. Neo-Megilp is made from Gamblin. It is a thixotropic medium, meaning it is solid when it's standing still, and it's fluid when a pressure is applied to it. An easier way to think about it is it's a jelly. It's like a jelly. It is a moderate dryer. It's not a super fast dryer like liquid, but it is a moderate dryer that allows you to work pretty much almost in any stage of a painting. So it allows the paint to have more body to it. By body, I mean it's thin, but it's a richer, thin paint, which is why I like to use it in the background. A lot of painters typically use more medium in the backgrounds, which is unfortunately why I think a lot of older paintings crack in the backgrounds, because too much linseed oil was used in the background. Let's see, from Rob CP. When did you see Leonardo's CV? A footnote said I can also paint and sculpt. Oh, his resume. I didn't see his resume. I don't know. Yeah, funny. Leonardo da Vinci writes a resume with a cover letter. And now we're adding more structure for the side of the maxilla of the face. Like I said, this long-term demonstration is quite a marathon, so please feel free to ask any art-related questions. As the painting evolves, honestly, the more I watch these painting videos, the visuals explain more, I think, than I can narrate to you. And as you see, I'm working from one shape to another shape, but a lot of it is just trying to work with the subtlety and push the form into the most, I'd say, easy on the eyes kind of look. I go by feel, because sometimes, especially in this stage, we're in the middle stages already, and this is still under 1 hour. So I don't really paint this quickly on camera, like, ever. But in the middle stages, if something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So one of my teachers would always say, if it looks wrong, it's probably wrong. If it looks right, it's probably wrong. And because that is the nature of representational painting. That is the nature of it all. And the biggest advice I can give you all, watching the painting at this point, having seen what I've done at this point, is the very last thing on my mind is likeness. And it's kind of weird for a portrait artist to say that, but the very last thing on my mind is likeness. And here's my justification for it. My justification for it is this. If you can work freely and paint effortlessly and get close to the ballpark of the model, the difference between the perfect likeness and the imperfect likeness is so small that if you spend the entire duration of the beginning of your painting chasing that so small thing, you miss the big simple things like light and shadow, structure, form, and all of that stuff. Which is why I don't suggest that you spend an eternity trying to get the exact likeness in light and shadow, unless you are doing a super perfect commission. Then go for the likeness in light and shadow right away, because what you're doing at that point is kind of decorating something for someone. But when you're painting expressively like this, this is the way I would really suggest that you think about it. So, Christopher, what's your take on AI generated art? I think, you know, like everyone says robots are going to take over, and my spirit animal is Bender from Futurama. I'm going to type that out for you. Bender from Futurama is this, his name is Bender Bending Rodriguez. He's from this TV show named Futurama that came on in the 90s. Or, well, there goes my internet, but came on in the early 2000s or something like that. I could relate to that robot so well, let me tell you. That robot is my favorite of all time. And I got nothing against it. Like, if Bender was making paintings, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's not art. I would just say it was art made by Bender. Because AIs are going to get to a point in the future, I'm sure, where they're going to become self-aware. When they are self-aware, they're going to be like us. They're going to be like humans, making their own decisions, making their own paintings. So I don't say that it's not art. I say that it's a different type of art. So that's my take on it. So from Rob, let's see, we're talking about Da Vinci. He had wrote about 20 things he could do, such as invent weapons, design bridges. Let's see, quickly for soldiers. Yeah, he had a lot of, yeah, he was a busy person. Hey, Marcus. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Let's see. Marcus has written, I found myself trying to mark the first basic angles and proportions of the model, but when I think the basic angles look right, after a few minutes it seems off. Any way to predict likeness? So I like that you mentioned that angles, in particular, angles should be somewhat intuitive, but they are analytical. Now, as we start to add more of the subtlety on the side of the mouth, you see that I am constantly moving that angle little by little. So as a matter of feel, you need to relate the shapes to one another. And let's look at the final image. That, by the way, that you're looking at is my mall stick. This is a selfie stick that I ripped the top off of, put a microfiber cloth, and then some painter's tape. Five Below. You do not have to pay a lot of money for a mall stick. So we're talking about angles, and I believe the mouth is going to change. I think. Let's look at the finished painting again. And you see they're very subtle. It hasn't happened yet, but at some point the left portion of the mouth is going to move. Did I get it right in the first hour? No, I didn't get it right. And you have to get it a little bit wrong before you can get it right. And naturally it's going to look a little bit different naturally. So the best thing to do is to work with your angles as freely as you can. One thing you can do is take one portion of an angle and carry it all the way through and see where it meets the other side of the painting. For example, if you take the corner of the mouth and you move it all the way to the right, it meets up pretty much close to where the ramus of the jaw fits. At this point, I think I had her a little too narrow. So at some point, I do widen her jaw a little bit. I think I might overdo it at the end. I'm looking at the final painting. So, not perfect, but it is what it is for under 2 hours. Oh, I'm glad you like the idea for a mall stick. Yeah, and here I can show you all my materials, really. The most useful one really is the palette, though. But this is a clean version of it, of the New Wave Grand View. Not Grand View. The New Wave Highland palette. This is my all-time favorite palette. And yes, this one is my forever palette. For those of you that are like, you know, like you've been watching my videos for a while, this right here is my Lamborghini. This is my Ferrari. This is not my daily driver. For those of us car people out there, who am I to say I'm car people? I barely can afford a car. But anyway, this is the New Wave Highland, not a very expensive palette, and it's good for multi-purpose. As you see there, I'm using it for the side palette there. It is the most comfortable palette I think ever. It's 12 by 16 and it fits in the Stay Wet palette box, so it's easy to travel with. Hey Christopher, oh good, I'm glad you love that palette. You know what? We didn't get a lot of responses for what everyone struggles with. I think maybe that's too personal. So let's ask everyone now. What does everyone use for a palette? That's a great question. So what does everyone use for a palette? And I'll even type it for you. When I was teaching in person last Sunday, some of my students actually use, I saw them, what did they use? A cutting board. Like from a kitchen, they used a cutting board for a palette. So that's pretty creative. I think you can do a lot of things with a palette. In the meantime, what you're looking at on the painting is, again, more subtlety working around the entire face. And that is a pretty big brush to use on the upper eyelids. So I guess what I was doing there was trying to be more efficient. I must have felt that it got a little too warm, so I went in with green. And see how the green is still on the left-hand side of the palette. And the light underneath of the eyebrow for the side plane of the eye socket is definitely a little bit cooler. Now I'm doing something that I don't really suggest you do, but if you do, it might be a fun learning experience anyway, is I am really not taking a break because my camera, as I'm filming this, I'm actually not able to shut off the camera because I just can't, because I use my streaming software to record it because you saw what happened last time. I tried to record using my camera and the file corrupted. So my camera, some part of my camera must have broken, so I can't really upload it to my computer. So I recorded this using my streaming software. Hey Libertas, don't worry, we're going to be here for another 46 minutes, 55 seconds. This is a live stream that has been painted or filmed ahead of time, so I'm able to talk with everyone and we can share our thoughts and opinions and all that stuff. So don't worry, you're fine. You're perfectly fine. So let's see. Christopher uses an acetate folder with cardboard underneath. Wow. Very creative there. Let's see. Rob uses a glass shelf with some gray paper underneath. A lot of creative people here. Adam uses glasses. Oh wait, no, I think you wrote that's what you struggle with. Glasses are pretty difficult. I would always kind of suggest to kind of put them in early, even in your umber drawing, knowing that you're going to paint them out and then paint them back in, paint them out. That's because of the nature of glasses. It does get a little bit complicated, but typically glasses, all you really need is light and dark for the frame and maybe like a little glare or something for the lens, and you've got glasses. Marcus, let's see. Oh, I'm glad you liked my advice. When do you start painting? Also, when did you start painting? Also, can you remember what specifically made you want to paint? Good question. Well, let's go way back. You're probably in elementary school. I was a big Dragon Ball Z fan. I don't know why I keep mentioning that, but I started out drawing Goku and Vegeta, and I would draw them on like notebook paper or something like that, and then I would sell them for $1. I remember, and I would use that for lunch money sometimes. Not that I didn't have it, but I liked having extra stuff, I guess, for lunch money, like a carton of milk or something like that. But it's not like I had it that bad. I did have lunch money, and plus I think that might be my earliest time. I think probably 4th, 5th grade. Actually trying to draw something that looked like something. And then in middle school, I would draw cars. I thought I was going to be like a car designer. I would fill up notebooks with cars when I was supposed to be focusing. Oh, by the way, on the painting, I am moving the eyebrows down. So like I said, it's not all going to be perfect right away since we were talking about angles. Especially Marcus, for you were talking about angles. So eyebrows, I actually like to paint them out and then paint them back in. But in this case, I'm doing both. I'm painting them out to add more refinement, and I am fixing the drawing. So 2 things at once, and multitasking really is the hard part with ALLA PRIMA. It's the hard part with anything, really. I'm glad that I can just sit here and talk with you. It is so much more relaxing. Back to my history. I started oil painting in high school. I was I think I was a senior in high school. I was like 17, 18. This was 2009. And I remember taking a field trip, I believe, in my art class to the National Gallery of Art in DC. And I saw this guy doing a master study of a still life, of this big still life with the duck in it, and there was like a landscape and all this stuff. I remember particularly, I'm gonna show you. I remember particularly seeing this, a little glass container with a lot of like patina on it, or like a lot of dried paint, and his was a round one. I think it was probably like it held fruit in it or something. This one used to have, I think it had marmalade, I think it had in it. I don't remember, but I remember seeing him do that, seeing his painting, that was the first time I really thought to myself, I want to paint stuff like this. And then I started getting into like, I mean, I started with acrylic because that's what was available in the class, but quickly moved into oil paint. And from then and there, I pretty much was kind of obsessed with it. And I was very lucky with my teachers. So lucky. I've had some of the best teachers, I think, in the entire East Coast of the US. So I got very lucky with my teachers. So ever since then, I did deviate a little bit. I went and got a math degree and thought I was going to be a math teacher and all this stuff. But I always painted. I always kept painting. I don't think a week would go by where I wouldn't paint something. I just always kept at it. And now I'm 31. So started first oil paintings when I was 17. Now I'm 31. So hopefully that was a good answer for you. I can go on and on about that, but I do want to continue to narrate the painting too. So now it's starting to get more form, particularly there. You see how I'm punching up the light on the eyebrow, the superciliary arch right across from the corner of the eyebrow, working through the frontal ridge of the skull. Her frontal ridge is a little bit more flat, so I'm making it a little bit more flat. So from Libertas. Oh, good. I love. I'm glad that you love watching the painting footage. Thank you so much. So Stephanie used glass with gray paper underneath in a Masterson plastic paint carrier. Good. Very creative, everyone, with the glass. Rob CP. So you're gonna put a grayscale and color wheel underneath my glass palette to help with values, and I can never remember complements for neutralizing. Oh, you can. You will. After today, you're going to remember. Red and green is like Christmas. Red and green is like Christmas. Think about Christmas with red and green. And those are your complementary colors. Red and green. Blue and orange. How can we use a memory device for that? Orange is underneath of a blue sky. Think of oranges underneath of a blue sky. That's blue and orange. What about yellow and purple? Well, that one I don't know. Yellow and purple. Yellow and purple. Yellow and purple. YP. Think Yupari. There you go. Yellow and purple. That's how you can think about neutralizing. So Yupari, right? Y and P. So my name is Yupari. So think Yupari, yellow and purple. So Christmas, red and green. Orange is under a blue sky. Orange and blue. Yellow and purple. Think Yupari, Y and P. So that might be a way for you to remember the complementary colors for neutralizing stuff. All right, so now we're pushing the form, and this is really like we're at 1 hour and 12 minutes with 38 minutes left. Now this is the point in the painting where not a lot of stuff is going to happen in a very long amount of time. Like I said, I keep showing you the final result. Not a lot of little things are going to take, so in 38 minutes the left hand side is going to look like the right hand side. So not a lot of things happen in a very long amount of time. This is the part where I typically lose people. This is the part where people get bored of a painting video. We're going to capitalize on the fact that this is now pre-recorded. So the commentary, you are going to guide the commentary. Ask me whatever you want to know. I am an open book. I will tell you whatever you want to know about the painting process here. And do me a favor, if you can, help to share this video. I know that you can't see the mixture that I did there, but I can tell you at this point, I'm now using more lead white than titanium white, because it allows me to have more control over the value range. And I'll get more into the specifics about that now. Hey Rob CP. you will remember the compliments now. Oh, good, good. Remember, Christmas yellow and Christmas green and red. Orange is under a blue sky. Orange and blue. Yupari Y and P for yellow and purple. That's how you will remember your complementary colors. Let's see. Stephanie Thompson, you had a classmate with purple pants and yellow boots. Awesome. Rocking those complementary colors. That's what's up. Yellow. Wow. Purple pants. I need to get me some purple pants. I need some purple pants. I'm pretty much just a grayscale. I've just got gray hoodie and black pants and Dragon Ball Z socks. Not like I'm that big of a fan of that show, but it's just funny that I keep mentioning that. Alright, so at this point now, underneath of the wing of the nose, I pushed a little bit more of a sharp light and I made it cooler to add contrast to the color. So that decision that I made right there is something that I picked up from Rembrandt. So all the Rembrandt studies that I've done, if you see the little red line underneath of the wing of the nose, start to implement that into your paintings. If you start to implement that into your paintings, it will show that you have been looking at Rembrandt paintings. In particular, his self-portraits, he would always put that in there. And then contrasting the side with more of a greenish color. Sometimes portrait artists do that because like right here, this is closer to the skeleton. Right here underneath of the tear ducts, that is closer to the skeleton. So typically, we'll actually put cooler colors there to kind of show what the skeletal structure looks underneath. What it looks like underneath. And another thing about wet painting, we're now like an hour into it. It is important that you don't use alkyds for like a super fast dryer, because at this point in 1 hour it would already be tacky, almost touch dry. Most alkyds would. And now you see I've actually adjusted the mouth yet again. So remember I said that the mouth was going to need some adjusting there. Hey Cal, end result looks more rounded, softer, yet sculpted. Exactly, there you go. Good. I pointed it out. See? So it is more rounded and it is a little bit more sculpted. I adjusted her chin and the angle of the mouth still will change eventually, but you see the direction and exactly we start out with sharper planes and now like a sculptor we're kind of using like sandpaper or something to adjust it. And then there goes my malt stick, because though I always get paint on my hands, I try to avoid it as much as I can. Hey Reem, now the eyes became more lively before that, like paintings in the 19th century in the Louvre. I try to look at old master paintings like all the time. I've got right next to me, I started something. I started a Nelson Shanks, another Nelson Shanks. So you see it's just in the umber sketch, which by the way, I used purple and yellow to draw it out, because remember Yupari YP, purple and yellow, that's going to give you a nice brown that you can draw with. I could have easily used red and green if I wanted to. Hey Adam MG, well let's see, would you like to have every week or some of your lives about color mixing? Let's see. I wouldn't, in theory, I want to do live streams every week. I want to do them as frequently as I can handle them. I will admit to you that I got stressed when I was doing the live paintings and talking through it. It stressed me out because it's very difficult for me to carry conversation while I'm painting. It's different when I'm teaching online, because I have maybe like 3 people asking me questions, but it gets a little bit harder, and I actually want to be able to talk with you and to guide you through. the painting live. So I would like to do once a week or something like that. About color mixing. So Adam, you want me to talk about color mixing? You know, that's something we can cover right here, right then and now, like right now. So color. The most important thing for you to know about color is, first of all, know your basic color theory. So your basic color theory is the primaries and the secondaries and what complementary colors are. Also know that every color has three components: hue, value, and chroma. So chroma is how bright something is. For example, the red on a stoplight is going to be more chromatic than the red on an apple. The red on an apple is probably going to be more chromatic than the red of the lips of the model. Not necessarily. They may end up being close, but that's what chroma is. Value is how light, how dark is it. And hue is, what is it? Red, yellow, green, blue, and purple, all that stuff. Now, that's color theory, but how do you actually use color in a sense that gets you somewhere in form? That is the organization on your palette. Use strings. Strings are gradations. I used to call them color value web. Notice the entire time of the painting duration, light has been on the top, dark has been on the bottom, cool has been on the left, and warm has been on the right. So that organization, even though we've got some lights in the darks and darks in the lights, that organization is going to enable you to maneuver around. With skin color, you want to have a basis of your skin color. A basis is going to be such as burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and white. That could be your basis for the skin color. And then you can add a little bit of cadmium red and alizarin for the warmth of the lips. The basis for the skin colors here is more sporadic. So I'm going between red and green, purple and yellow, orange and blue, and then adding all kinds of colors to get the skin color on the face. And when I want it to be cooler, I add more green. Sometimes I add more blue. That becomes something that you feel. Color in that sense is something that you feel. But if you struggle with it, think about your basic color theory, like I just mentioned. Think about a basis or a local color for an area that you're painting, and then keep your palette organized. That is, honestly, that's all you need. That's all you need to be able to paint something like what you're seeing on the screen here. And you can all do it. You can all do it. It just takes the right teaching and the right practice. So from Christopher, Galkid gets tacky here in 30 minutes. Yes, Galkid is the fast drying version from Gamblin. Galkid is a very fast drying, so I would definitely suggest Neo-Megilp over Galkid, unless you want it to dry that fast. So let's see from Marcos. You've been oil painting for 1 year, self-taught. Seems like learning without trained teachers makes it much longer and harder to identify mistakes. This takes a toll on my will to continue to learn, since there is no traditional trained oil painter telling me what I'm doing wrong and what to do right. Well, I've got you if you want me to give you advice on your artwork. Remember, everyone, the virtual classroom for my online students. Remember, that starts out at $10 a month. You're able to send me up to 2 images each month, and you get access to all the playlists. But more importantly, let's talk about the feedback, right? You're talking about feedback. I have many years of training. I don't know how long ago was 2009? How many years ago was 2009?
It was 13 years ago.
Yeah, there we go. 13 years ago. Got 13 years of painting nonstop. Had the best teachers, I think, in all of the East Coast. I can give you advice, and it's only going to everyone out there, I can give you advice. It's only going to cost you $10 a month, because you probably have to make a living somehow. And I can guide you and tell you specifically what needs to be done with your paintings and my 3-pointer system. That video is going to come out later tonight. So after I'm done with this, I'm going to probably go eat dinner or something, and then later tonight I'm going to create the virtual classroom. Another thing though, you know, if $10 a month is too much, do as many master studies as you can. Focus on your favorite painter, John Singer Sargent, Rembrandt, whoever it may be. That will guide you even better than trying to go out on your own and choose something to paint, something that, you know, like, let me tell you right now, this is the holidays. The worst thing you can do, if you want to ruin your painting ability, the worst thing you can do is paint a gift for a family member of a graduation photo, a wedding photo, those smiley pictures with the flash. And do not do it. And this is the holidays, and I'm telling you, if your family is like, oh, you're so talented, I want you to paint my grandson, you know, kindly tell them, thank you for the support. We can take your picture and apply a painter filter to it and put it in a frame, and there you go. Do not paint one of those smiley portraits for family members as a gift or something like that. Be very careful of that, because that will definitely hinder progress. So let's see. From Christopher, from tone and hue. Hue, value, and chroma. Those are the components of a color. Hue, value, and chroma. Those are the components to a color. So for Marcus, my question is there any way to discipline myself learning by myself? Apologies for the vague and open-ended question. No, don't worry. Trust me, I'm a beginner in billiards, pocket billiards, so I know what it's like to. There's so much information online. There's so many ways, like so much teaching out there. It's like going to a restaurant with too many things on the menu. That's what the internet has become. Focus on the old masters, and the old masters. You know what they did? They focused on the old masters. Do as many master studies as you can. Give yourself all the time that you can. That is one of the #1 ways that you can improve on your painting. Please trust me on this. That is one of the best ways to improve. Christopher, you suggest copying a painting by Raphael, then Caravaggio. It depends on the style that you're interested in. If you're interested in form and structure, yes, Caravaggio was indeed better than Raphael when it came to painting form. Of course, people can counter that, but that's just in my opinion. So from Christopher, control of paint, switch them around, try to paint exact shapes, etc. Brush and paint control. Well, there you go. Yeah, paint handling is a major thing. No problem, Adam. Let's see. From Christopher, paint/draw correct precise forms. Oranges, then go organic like ears, nose, lips, then eyes. Use a reference always. You know, when you're painting something like an ear, you could probably use a mirror, I think, and turn your head and use your own ears to paint that, I would suggest. So like I said, this is a marathon, everyone. This is a marathon. We're going on now an hour, 27 minutes, and there's only 23 minutes left. And now you see the painting is starting to really resemble its final form. Here's when I start to adjust the, I think this is where I start to adjust the edge for the mandible. We will see. And I'm actually putting in thicker paint. I don't think I realized it at the time, but I was focusing on the paint handling, and I'm adding less medium to the jaw area, less thinner to the jaw area, so that I can have a much more precise shape. And then I go and work on the shoulder. So I do work all over the place, all around. Alright, so looks like the chat has slowed down a little bit, and we've got about 20 something of us here, so Definitely feel free to at least say hello, everyone. So where in the world are you? Where in the world is everybody? I am in Maryland. I am in Maryland, USA. Where is everybody? Where in the world are you? Some of you have already told me, but I would like to know again. And the chat has gone a little slow. As you see here, the form, every little decision, this is a small change at a time, just like it would be for a long-term painting. So from Nilu, how do you start retouching a week later if one can't, let's see, if one can't do it in one go? Good question. I actually start my paintings always usually the same way. If I want to go in with, if I have a longer time, for example, like I did with this, I'll go right into color quickly, but I can easily return to this and continue to refine it. I can. All you got to do is just give enough time for it to dry and just go right into it. You can just keep working on it, go right into it. If you have a short amount of time, draw it in umber like I did with this. Draw it in umber or just in lines, and then go in with light and dark. So that's more of a like a long-term layered format. And Nilu, try not to paint that thick too. If you want your paint to dry faster, don't paint as thick, and use a little bit more mineral spirits. That will actually make it dry faster. So Nilu, you're from India. Adam is from San Antonio, Texas. Page 42 is from the UK. Welcome, welcome. Stephanie's from Portsmouth, Virginia, US. Oh, very close to me. At least relatively speaking. Marion is in California. Christopher is from the Philippines. I don't know, where is Nilu? So a question from Rob. Let's see. You seem to have a natural eye for values. I find colors make it difficult to see values. Thanks for watching from Newcastle, England. I will tell you that values, as you see, the palette has now become a little bit more sporadic with some light in the middle and light on the top. With values, it's repetition is key. So the more faces that you paint, the more automatic it becomes where the light and where the dark goes. Specifically, if you're working with similar lighting, it changes with different lighting. But the more you do something, like the more you do landscapes, similar setting landscapes, the more automatic it will become. It's like playing pool, like pocket billiards. Like if you're playing a high stress game and you come across a shot that you've done like 50,000 times, it's less difficult for you than if you've practiced it so much than if you encountered it for the first time during a game. And like I said, my best advice for everyone is the old master studies. Even if they're not fully finished, just the more time your eyes spend focusing on the old masters, things like values, like you said, will become more automatic, more natural, as you mentioned, Rob. So, but yeah, there is many years of experience with it, and if I were to be rediscovering, or if I were to be seeing this kind of thing for the first time, no way. There's no way I would have been able to do this at this pace. You're correct. It is the amount of time that's been spent with the subject matter. And now I'm starting to add some of the reflected, the warmth on the red side of the light of the face. By face, I mean the hair. Sometimes I like to sneak it in, even if it's not there. I kind of sneak it in there. Just some kind of backlight. It adds some nice contrast to the hair. So this is a marathon, everyone. Where in the world is everyone? So Marion, you're from California. Let's see. I think I already read that. This is a marathon. And like I said, to do this in 1 hour, 30 minutes is, I don't even think I could have done this last year. It's all about repetition. It's all about practice. And looking at the Rembrandts, we're always doing a master study in the online classes. That's one thing really that makes my online classes a little bit more unique, is we're constantly looking at master studies. And the reason is, if you're going to be teaching yourself online, if you're going to be self-taught, if you don't have the resources to paint from a live model like weekly or daily, you're going to want to look at master studies over reference photos. And if you use reference photos like I do, make sure that you are the one taking the photographs. Hey Rob, for painting a master study, does it matter on the size of the canvas I paint on? Because so far I just have been using letter size canvas paper. No, no problem at all. I mean, for example, let's see, let's look at this one. This one was done in the online classes. You're not going to see it in detail, but this is 8 by 10. And just like you said, letter size, pretty much like letter sized. And it's fine. You can do 8 by 10s. These days I actually do 8 by 10s more, just because, again, they're easier to sell. But also, a little bit of advice, try to keep a face around the same size as your hand. So if the face is around the same size as your hand, use your hand as a reference. That's a pretty good size face. It's smaller than life size, but it's not too tiny where it's difficult to paint. Marcus. Oh, cool. Yeah, I would definitely love to have you in my online classes. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, art colleges, they're going to cost an arm and a leg. Which, by the way, I think I learned it here. Someone told me, I forgot who told me actually. You know the saying, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg? Apparently that comes from commission paintings. Because having an arm and then down to a leg costs you significantly more if you're commissioning a painting back in the old days. I think that's where that term comes from. But yeah, I get what you mean, Marcus, about art colleges. I totally agree. Yeah, remember everyone, if you want to have your artwork in the weekly virtual classroom video for up to 3 pointers, definitely check out the link to my online class. It is in the description box of this video. Remember, the classes start out at $10 a month. If you want to Zoom with me weekly, that's $40 a month, which also gets you access to everything else in the online classes. But if you want feedback weekly, then that's the $10 a month online classes. I'm glad you liked the advice, Rob. So let's see, we bomb. Let's see, what if I don't want to use any solvent? Can I paint first? Can I still paint fast in one layer of paint? I find my paintings are a little too transparent. What do you suggest? So it depends on your brand. If your paint brand seems a little transparent, which, by the way, everyone, we've got 12 minutes until the painting demo ends. So remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask now, because the video will end in 12 minutes, and I actually don't know what my streaming software is going to do when it ends. So I'm actually kind of new to this format. Now I'm starting to add more light to the shoulder. Pretty much Cadmium Orange. That's more of an example of chroma. So if you want to paint without any solvent, I would suggest, if you don't want to use any solvent at all, then the best thing to do would be probably, this is tough. If your concern with solvent is the danger of the like airborne stuff, like if the health concern is your concern, spike lavender oil is going to be your best tool to use, and it will make your studio smell like a spa. So if you like the smell of lavender, spike lavender is more expensive, so you would want to use the smallest amount of spike lavender, just enough to get the paint to thin out a little bit. That's going to be the best thing for you to do. It's a little more expensive, so you don't want to buy the big container unless you do, and you can use that in place of a solvent like a petroleum distillate, like odorless mineral spirits, which is what Gamblin Gamsol is. And it will still dry fast. So we bomb. Let's see. Rembrandt is the brand. I heard that Rembrandt paints are good paints. For being such a Rembrandt fan, it's kind of odd that I don't use them, but they should be good paints. I've heard a lot of good things about them. So now the painting is starting to slow down even more. The final 10 minutes. Hard to believe we started with a blank canvas, but this is what happens when you relax, you listen to music, and you just flow. Let the paint flow. Yep, of course we bomb, and definitely try this place out. Jerry's Artarama, if you are in the US, or Jackson's if you are elsewhere. So if you're elsewhere, try Jackson's. If you are in the US, try Jerry's Artarama. So let's see, from Christopher, add white or black to transparent paint. I don't have black paint on here. Black depends on which one. Like ivory black is a transparent neutral blue. Mars black is still blue, but it's closer to the red. Bone black or grapevine black, those are more, I guess, high end from Rublev. That's more of like that middle gray, earthy kind of black, but it is still blue in nature. Every highlight that I add is a color. Notice I don't just throw white onto the nose, although if I do, I probably will go back into it with something else. Now here's where we're making the adjustment for the lip. And we must have made it already at some point. But remember, I like to use Silver Brush brand. I use bristle brushes for most of the heavy lifting of the carrying of all the paint. And then when it comes to the fine details, like the highlight on the nose and things like that, I like to use Sable brushes. They have a soft mark like synthetic brushes, but they don't carry a lot of paint. Sable brushes are nice because they carry a lot of paint and they apply a really soft touch. So I went from the highlight on the nose down to the light on the eyebrow. I'm basically keying the lights. I'm adjusting the light key, meaning the brightness of the light, the condition of the light. How warm is it? How cool is it? Oh, let's see if anyone has any other questions. You're basically seeing it evolve completely from scratch. The next one I'll do, I'm not sure what I'll do, but I will do my best to keep it this kind of format. Now you see the palette has become much more sporadic, but yet there's still a control. There's still control to it. Hey, Rob. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm using the sables to add more of the curls, the waves, the detail for the hair. The trick for the hair, for the individual hair, individual hairs, you don't want to put individual strands for each hair, each piece of hair, and instead, as you're seeing there, you want to abbreviate it, so make it look like there's individual strands of hair on one side, but then on the other side it's completely flat. The viewer will only look at it for a split second and be convinced that it is hair that's resting over top. And then they'll look at it for another 20 seconds or so, and then, oh, that's how they did it. So you don't want to perfectly delineate every single hair because it's going to look like spaghetti. So what you want to do is, like you're seeing there, in small sections that you select, put in those individual little strands of hair, and then it will make the viewer's eye think that those strands of hair are delineated everywhere. But in fact, you only did that where people are going to look at right away. And this, by the way, will be for sale at some point in the future. All of the 8x10s will be for sale at some point in the future, if anyone's interested. So from Rob, I change my mind often on who my favorite painter is, but I often return to Vermeer. Who is your favorite painter? Rembrandt. At this point, Rembrandt, for sure. I didn't even have to... Rembrandt and Nelson Shanks, really, they're both my favorites. But I will say Rembrandt's probably my longtime favorite. Yep. Knees weak, mom spaghetti. He's nervous. What are those lyrics? I don't want to get copyright, but you know what song I'm talking about. So yeah. You don't want to differentiate every single strand. It will look like spaghetti. Hey, Marianne. Oh, good. I'm glad you liked this presentation. Thank you. If you like it, I will do more of them. Much less stressful for me because I get to relax and paint when I'm filming, and then I get to relax and talk when I'm narrating. Here we bomb. What if I want to give the painting a little bit of impasto look? How much paint do I need on my palette? It looks like you use a small amount of paint, but still looks solid. Well, let's look at my palette. So we've got 3 minutes left on the painting. When the timer ends, what I'm gonna do is, if the screen goes black, which it might, I'll just put the picture of the final painting. I use large amounts of paint, piles of paint on here. When I want to go more impasto, you can actually use smaller increments of thick paint in specific areas instead of one big brush with a ton of paint. You can also use one big brush with a ton of paint and spread the paint more evenly, and that's what I did for the majority of this. But if I wanted more impasto, which I didn't really put much, then I could have done it that way. The only real impasto is on the light of the hair, to try to get that to look more vibrant. So from Webom, let's see, but when I do it the same way, it doesn't look like it the same way. Well, a lot of it is going to be touch, like how like how soft of an edge you put in there. A lot of times it's the softness contrasted with the thickness. So the thinness of the background in contrast, for example, on the light on the shoulder, I can't point in the, anyway, the light on the shoulder you see there, that's a small brush that had a lot of paint in contrast to the fluidity of the paint in the background. That's another thing that I took from Rembrandt. He has a lot of moments in his paintings that are very thin and fluid, contrasted with very heavy, thick applications of paint. So Libertas, no, I've never been in Italy. I wish. Oh, I'm glad you like this format, Christopher. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Encourages me to do more of these. Hey, Jonas, let's see. Oh, I'm glad you like the painting and the colors. Yes, my intention was to finish it in one session, which is insane. It is a very difficult thing to do, but now we're down to the final minute, and it is going to look different when it's photographed, but I didn't really do anything. It's just the way the photograph came out. My intention was to finish it in one session, but I really only recommend anyone do this as an exercise, because in reality, I would normally return to this painting, but in order to make a more concise presentation, as everyone says, even though it's been almost 2 hours, I want it to be somewhat presentable in one sitting so that I can present the most amount of information to you. And next time I'll be able to talk about other things, like if you want me to specifically talk about color, I'll be able to talk more specifically about color. This time I focused more with paint handling in ALLA PRIMA sense. Hey Libertas, oh thank you. Oh, I'd love to be your guest in Sicily. That would be awesome. One of my teacher friends, last 20 seconds, everyone. One of my teacher friends goes to Sicily quite often. I think once a year she goes. I think that's it. I think I stopped painting, so I must have let the camera roll for a little bit. So let's see what happens. 7 seconds left. Let's see what happens. The screen is either going to go dark or it's going to repeat. I think it's going to repeat. Okay, so it did that. So now we're going to put the video back on here. So I'm going to, let's see. Can I even do that? Okay, so now it's going to go all the way through, and I'm going to stop it, let's say right there. And I'm going to put the finished painting here. So you see the photography is a thing, right? The photography of the painting. And now we can actually talk about photography a little bit. So it should be the same exact thing. Maybe some small differences, but the same exact thing. I used more light when I took the picture of it than when I was filming it, because I don't want to have maximum light on my eyes when I'm painting. The setting on the camera is just different. It's higher quality in photography mode than it is in video mode. So we will put this here now, and that is the finished version of the painting. You have seen the entire painting come into fruition. I still have to sign it. I'll probably sign it later before I photograph it. I mean, before I do the final, you know what I mean, like post it for sale. So from Rob CP question, please, what size is the biggest painting you have done, and would you like to paint a huge painting like 20 feet? Oh yeah, for sure. If I could, I mean, that would be like a mural, right? But yeah, if I could, I would like to paint a larger painting. But it's just, let's see if I can take this. Never mind. So yeah, I would like to paint a larger painting, but it just it's gonna be, you know, a mural, and when will I ever like be able to do a mural, right? The largest painting I've ever done is, I think, 5 feet by 3 feet. That's the largest painting I've ever done. 5 feet by 3 feet. Sure, Adam. Yeah. Next time we can emphasize color. I'll put that in the title of the video. So when you're done painting, how do you save the rest of your paint? Good question. So when I'm done painting, I put the palette in the freezer. So whenever I'm done with the workday today, this is gonna go in the freezer, and that's it. Sometimes I'll put it in my stay wet palette box and then put it in the freezer, but I think for some reason the freezer on its own tends to work a little bit better. So later on tonight, you're going to see the virtual classroom video. Sometimes life happens and things happen and it ends up being uploaded on Wednesday, but you will most likely see it later tonight. So this is the point where I'm going to hang out and see if there are any last minute questions. I'm so glad that you enjoyed this format, because I did too. It was much better for me to be able to actually focus on communicating with you instead of having to, you know, juggle painting and communicating with you at the same time. And you saw this entire painting happen in real time. Whole thing was done in real time. So any last minute questions? I think a question might be, when am I going to do this next? I think next week, if all things go well. Next week around this time. So it was like 2 o'clock. 2 or 2:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time is a little easier for me. But if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, it should give you a little notification if you turn on the notifications whenever I go live. Yep, no problem, Rob. Thank you, Webuman. I'm sorry, I know I didn't pronounce your name right. Webauman. And I can drink water while I'm talking to you. Usually I don't, because I don't want to end up getting paint all over the water bottle, but this kind of worked. And you got to know a little bit more about me. I am an open book, just feel free to ask. Oh, thank you, thank you. Yep, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, everyone, if you enjoyed what you saw. Aileen, thank you. Thanks for watching. Can you put paint in aluminum foil? I'm sure you can. I'm not sure if that's going to be an airtight seal, but you could. But honestly, everyone, I think the best thing to preserve the paint that I've found has been just a freezer. Because the freezer naturally blocks off oxygen, and then it's colder, so the cold kind of prevents it from drying too. Plastic wrap works too, though it gets a little messy because the plastic wrap on the top tends to grab onto the paint if it touches the paint. But that works too. I've done it in the past, but it kind of latches onto the paint. I can show you the end result too. It's right above me. I think it's dry. I don't know. Nope, it's not dry. So the end result is actually this small. So if you look at it next to my face, looks like a bigger painting, doesn't it? But it is actually a lot smaller. In the colder temperatures, notice I'm wearing a hoodie. It tends to dry a little bit more slowly. Sorry about that. Let's see. When does it become wet? When you put it in the freezer? I don't think the paint becomes wet. You mean like the condensation and stuff? That's after you take it from the freezer. The oil paint actually doesn't freeze. It just kind of hardens when it gets cold, but it shouldn't damage it. So I've known some people even submerge it in water. I take the paint, the palette out of the freezer maybe like 5 minutes before I start painting. And then I just start painting. If there's anything wet on my palette that's like kind of in between dry, I kind of scrape it off. But sometimes the mixing space, it dries to the point where I can just paint over it and it doesn't really cause me any issues. But this is just laziness. I don't really, I used to clean the mixing space. I called it the sacred space. I used to clean it all the time. And then I got to a point where I was painting so much that I hated stressing over how I left my palette. I hated it. I hated stressing over how I left it. So I eventually just let it be. Alright, so it looks like that's all of the last minute questions. And I will get to filming another one like this pretty soon so that I can stream it next week. At least that's the goal. You know how it is. Life has its funny ways of doing things. So once again, thank you all so much for watching. Remember, if you like what you've seen here and you want to take your online art education with me further, please consider checking out my online classes on my Patreon, which is linked in the description box of this video, or you can just Google Yupari Patreon on Google and it should show up. The online classes start off at $10 a month, which gets you access to all of the pre-recorded videos, and more importantly, you get to get feedback from me in the virtual classroom video that is now made public to promote the online classes. So you get to see your own paintings on YouTube as I give you suggestions for the continuation of your ongoing projects. Once again, thank you all so very much. I wish you the very best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on the next one.